Hello, hello. Hello, team. So thank you very much for joining this session. So this session is about building an inclusive, multicultural environment at Merpay, about the past, the present, and the future. And we have two hosts, both Tim and I, and we will do a short self-introduction. So starting with me, my name is Robert. My surname is a little bit hard to pronounce, but it's Jerovsek, and I am an engineering manager here at Merpay. I joined around 2018, but I have like some history, let's say, in working in different countries. So before Japan, I used to work in Korea, and before that in Spain. But I come from Slovenia, and I used to work in like a few different industries. And even in Merpay, I actually started as a backend engineer, and then I wanted to change my role to engineering manager, like being in charge of a few different teams, and now focusing on managing other managers and trying to build a better organization together. And now we have team.
Yeah, so my name is Tosi, maybe easier to pronounce. But ultimately, I've also worked in different countries, France, UK, and now Japan, of course. I'm coming from Paris originally. I worked in a different industry too, and specialized in fintech around like 3-4 years ago, something like that, I guess. And joined Merpay in 2020 at the very beginning of the year, just before the Corona situation. And at the same time, basically, I arrived in Japan. So I started as a backend engineer in the QIC team, moved to the TL role, and since March 2021, I'm the engineering manager for QIC, but also manage other team where when the needs was existing, such as the CSO team and the balance team.
Thank you very much, team. So yeah, I will be facilitating the main parts, but it's going to be a panel discussion. So we will be talking, and if you have any questions, uh, please ask at any time. So you can post in our YouTube chat, or you can use the Twitter hashtag #MerpayTechFest and ask questions on Twitter as well. So feel free to use Japanese or English when you ask questions. So we will answer in English, of course, but there is an interpretation in Japanese. But if you are, let's say, up to it, then you can also listen to the English channel itself. So yeah, then let's get started with building an inclusive multicultural environment at Merpay. So first of all, let's start in the past. So I put a few dates here. I already mentioned one, but the other two you will soon see why I put them there. So the first one actually is when I joined Merpay. So yeah, I joined Merpay, as I said, in July of 2018. And I joined as a backend engineer. And so this was before the Merpay launch, right? So Merpay launched in 2019 in February. And as you can imagine, when you're trying to launch a service as big as Merpay, there's a lot of things that have to be done. So it was very, well, chaotic, kind of startup-ish, I guess, which is also one of the things that attracted me to come and build Merpay. And we have a few values, and I actually put like all for one here, because it's the value that allowed us to launch Merpay successfully, I believe. So at that time, Merpay didn't have as many engineers as we have now. So a lot of engineers, and not just engineers, like everybody from Mercari, the whole like company, came together to launch Merpay and made it a success. So of course there were many difficulties in there, but everybody coming together for the success of Merpay was really something that made me proud to be a part of this endeavor. So, but yeah, I mean, after the launch, we reached 5 million Merpay users in, well, a few months. So you can imagine that. So yeah, before the launch, it was hectic. After the launch, it was also very hectic. But still, we are here. We are, well, growing. So yeah, we did a great job at that time, everybody together, even before team joined us. But anyway, so at that time, as you can imagine, so Merpay is a financial service in Japan. So building this requires a lot of work as well, but also if you are in an industry that is a bit more traditional than some other industries, then there is a lot of like, of course, legal text, regulations, but also a lot of that is only available in Japanese. And you need Japanese. But when I actually joined Merpay as the first foreign hire from abroad. So we had a few foreigners inside the company, but they all came from within Japan. So I was the first who joined from abroad. I came directly from Korea to Merpay. And at that time, HR was a bit confused. But anyway, we kind of made it happen. And still, though, with Mercari having already more foreigners and already hiring more and more English speakers, there were sometimes a little bit of, let's say, misunderstandings, miscommunications. So a lot of effort was put into how can we collaborate better? So how can we communicate better? We are still doing this now, so it's not like okay, it's written like past, but we are still kind of trying and always improving. And but still, at that time, yeah, it started, and you can see that I put a few different teams names here. So DNI team, GOT, so Global Operations team, LDT, Language Education team. So Mercari put a lot of effort, and still we are putting a lot of effort into supporting not just English speakers, but also Japanese speakers, because we believe that we should be working together. So it's not just, okay, I don't know, the Japanese have to learn English. No, it's also about the foreigners trying to learn Japanese, trying to learn the culture. So it kind of goes both ways, right? And both sides can have their own like let's say biases as well. So this unconscious bias training was one good thing that our DNI team tried doing. Okay, understanding what biases there may be, trying to resolve those, and just being aware is already a giant step. We also have a lot of support from the GOT, so Global Operations team, all the time. So yeah, without them, we wouldn't be able to survive, really. So they support us during our one-on-ones, during our meetings. So if you need interpretations, they are there. If you need to have something translated, so I have a spec. As I said before, Japan, like fintech finance is a very regulations-heavy industry. And there's a lot of Japanese tax. So the first team I joined was the bank team. So we had to work with banks, how to connect with banks, and their specs were in Japanese, of course. So GOT was there to help us with translating those specs. But there was also other support. So as I said, we need to kind of work together. And how can we work together better? Like trying to kind of do some kind of team building events. So we had chat lunches. So this was before Corona, when it was a bit easier. So we had chat lunches in person, where you could join a Japanese speaking chat lunch. The company would pay for that, and you could just like talk in Japanese. The Japanese could join the English speaking chat lunch. Not even like the Japanese or the English, but just those that wanted to practice that language. So we have people who are more fluent in Japanese but are not Japanese. So yeah, you could join either one and just practice or just get to know others. So we put a lot of effort into this kind of bonding as well. And we also had language learning support. And yeah, I mean, like there's many other things that we're trying to do. And you can check the links for more details. But yeah, then, well, we did many things. And actually, I became involved into trying to push for this kind of organizational changes, slowly trying to support other engineers. I saw that many things could be improved. And of course, when you're joined as an engineer, your main focus is delivering the product, delivering the service, making sure that it's stable, making sure that it works, it can scale, there's no problems. But then after some point, you're like, okay, what other problems? At least I was thinking like that. What other problems could I help solve or improve? So I saw a lot of potential there as well for me. And Mercari has this nice system where it's quite well, it's not like super easy, but like it's still they want to kind of make you give your best. And for me, I wanted to tackle become an engineering manager, and even before becoming an engineering manager, I already like joined some of the meetings, the discussions. So that's one of the also good things. Like you can join this kind of like improvements, changes, even before you're like a manager, even if you're like just working in the engineering or even on the product or like anywhere else. Like we welcome this kind of one of our values is go bold. So if you want to change something, you can do it regardless of your role. And another thing that happened a little bit after that I put here as well is collaboration with Mercari. So of course we have been collaborating both Merpay and Mercari. We are in the same app, so you use us in the same place basically. But then like after the initial launch, there was a project to try to optimize the home screen a little bit. And that required even stronger collaboration between Merpay engineers and Mercari engineers. So we had this project ongoing, and there were a few frictions that happened. So to clarify how to better collaborate together, at that time, something was created called the English Communication Guidelines. So we do want to become a global tech company. That's what our aim is. And we don't want to force people to use English only. But we do want to kind of set expectations clear. And sometimes we don't set those very clearly because, of course, as a startup, we want to just make things work. And but still, sometimes setting expectations or some guidelines can help improve collaboration. And that's what we did for that specific project. And after that, soon after that, Tim became an engineering manager as well. So he was actually the first non-Japanese speaking engineering manager at Merpay. So maybe Tim can say a little bit about how his experience was.
Yeah, I'm not sure like I should be proud of that, but it's true. Still, like my Japanese level is not so good. Back in the days, it was like quite a challenge, you know.
Mm,
There are like big differences between like JP and Merpay. Ultimately, we all work like for the same group inside of the same application, but in
mm,
terms of like process management, in terms of like organization, even like cultural organization, it's slightly different.
mm,
And one part of that, of course, is the language which is used from the very beginning. Maybe like as Robert mentioned, and as I could understand by myself, used mostly or almost exclusively Japanese most of the time,
mm,
which make things kind of like a bit difficult for people that doesn't
mm,
speak Japanese, basically. And of course, when these kind of like barriers are created in a daily basis work,
mm,
it's just like more difficult to contribute. So I discussed it with Robert, that was like already trying to change the things jointly with David. David, we love you. And actually, I suggested that maybe I could join to work on this project. So Robert like welcomed me inside of it, and yeah, basically I started working this project as TL, moved to a new position slightly later. And one of the first contribution I made actually to this project was the English inclusiveness evaluation system. So it's a very, very long name, like all the names I'm giving to my project. But the thing is that before you start actually to try to change anything, you have to understand the situation, right? And you do that like for everything, like even like when it's something technically you're going to change, you're starting with an investigation if you want to be sure of like the risk of merging a feature or creating a feature. If you start with a business, you start with a business plan. Basically first you analyze the situation, and that's what we did. So this evaluation system is basically kind of like a matrix where we try to map all the different aspects of communication for an engineer inside of the company. And we defined, in addition of these different categories, different levels of English usage inside of a team. So, for instance, in these categories, you have like what is the language used on Slack? What is the language used during the meetings? What is the language used within the code base? Like, what about the onboarding? What about the playbook? But ultimately, all these kind of things. And for each of these different like, let's say, categories, we have like different levels ranging from none
mm,
to gold. And
mm.
the more you like goes up in these levels, the closer you have like a totally bilingual environment.
So
So
you
yeah.
were trying to gamify the system a little bit.
Say again?
You were trying to gamify the system with like
Exactly. But
bronze,
the
silver, and gold.
middle thing, it's actually an idea from David. So David,
Mm,
I didn't forget it. It was coming from you. Yeah, I had like a idea for different levels actually already,
mm,
because I didn't want it like to change everything for everyone all at once.
yeah, of course.
It was like more interesting to go gradually. When you introduce
Mm,
such a big change, it's important to take into consideration that people are busy and people are not proficient enough to go
mm,
directly to the target you define. And
mm,
we really need to understand that in general,
mm,
when we change something in the organizational process of a company, we need to
mm,
ensure that we do it gradually,
mm,
slowly, and that we communicate the goal. But
mm.
yeah, that's my style.
So yeah, I mean, of course, it takes time, and as we said before, like we don't want to push for like okay, everybody use English only, and yeah, I mean, many people were involved, David among them, and many others as well. So it's not just the foreigners, actually. It's also like the Japanese. So everybody, not, I mean, regardless of the nationality. And we don't want to kind of make differences, but still, understanding each other is very important. But yeah, anyway, this was about the English inclusiveness evaluation system. And team, what's this? This looks very
Yes.
nice.
So basically, like first, as mentioned, like we try to map the level of English
Mm,
usage through the not through the company, but at least through like most of the backend engineering teams, because
mm,
well, I'm coming from backend, so it was
mm,
sense for me to try to create like this matrix according to the backend
mm,
division organization. Of course, like we slowly like applied this kind of like mapping to other teams outside of backend,
mm,
especially on SRE architects and clients,
mm,
where Celia did a very, very, very good job. Thank you very much, Celia, if you watch this. And then when we understood the situation, it was time for the change.
mm,
So basically, how could we start to help different teams to move from the current level they had to the next level? But it's for the
mm.
slide that comes slightly after.
This one?
Yeah, basically again after.
The one after? Okay, let's go to the next one. This is
Perfect.
our message.
And yeah, before basically like I started to discuss about like the next projects we put in place, one of the most important things for people to understand is that
Oh,
we will not drop the use of Japanese inside of the company. And it's
mm,
very important that people understand that,
mm,
because I still have these kind of questions coming from time to time. People
mm,
are afraid, and I understand why. Because
mm,
in Japan, you have, let's say, big company in the past and very recently that decided to just like drop the usage of Japanese directly
mm,
and switch to English all of a sudden. It created kind of like huge backlashes,
mm,
as you can understand. It's not obvious for everyone which is not living inside of Japan, but actually the
mm,
usage of English is not that spread yet.
mm,
Even if like people still, of course, study English at school, um, well, let's say the proficiency might be like not, let's say, enough to ensure you that you can use English everywhere in the country or even in big cities like Tokyo. So basically, yeah, drop like switching directly to English is not something which is possible. It's not something that should be done,
mm.
and it's very important. I totally disagree with the
I mean,
company,
I
but
came to Japan because I wanted to improve my Japanese. So, I mean, I hope
makes
we
sense.
don't. I mean, we don't plan to drop Japanese. Otherwise,
Makes
it's
sense. It comes as a surprise because, like, generally in IT,
yeah.
like usage of English is like super widespread, like kind of like
Mm,
everywhere I worked before. So, like, of course, London it makes sense, but Paris too. But
mm.
yeah, it's true that in Japan it's not that kind of level still.
I don't know. I mean, when I was in Korea, like it was kind of. I mean, yeah, everybody was trying to use more English, but still, it was maybe similar to Japan. I mean, I guess it depends on the company. But
Yeah.
yeah, anyway, I mean, company culture
Yeah.
is also very important. How you want, like, what kind of culture you want to have inside the company, right? Um, but yeah, and we have the next slide, which has also some interesting numbers.
Yeah, so basically, like we started like this project,
Oh,
which was called like the Inclusive Team Initiative. So basically,
mm,
like mapping the different levels, but also like rolling out the change. So in order to do that, purpose was to actually create kind of like an objective for all the teams to reach. Of course, it was not like reaching like the gold level everywhere
mm,
because it makes no sense. So I tried to move to kind of like an empirical approach.
mm,
And because the KYC at the very beginning when I joined still had some big difficulties about the usage of English, but still was more advanced than many teams inside of the company.
mm,
I took it as let's say my basis, my threshold,
mm,
meaning that if I could do it when I joined this company, and if it was
mm,
good enough for me to like basically perform my duty tasks, or even like suggest new improvements or suggest new projects, then if we reach this level for every team inside of the company, then it means it's kind of like good enough. And yeah, that's what I call like the minimum inclusiveness threshold, which spans across like all the different categories inside of this matrix I discussed before.
mm,
And yeah, so we started like very slowly with a very small number of teams back in the days. Basically, I think like we tried to focus on the team that were like the most advanced in the English usage,
mm,
because well, it was just easier ultimately. It was just easier, and then it was difficult because slowly and slowly we rolled out to more teams, and more teams.
mm,
We had, as I mentioned before, client engineers that joined us to try to move this forwards, like Celia. Even like right now, Mercoin is seriously considering to try to apply this project to their own engineering division. So it's pretty cool. And yeah, we moved from like this zero team status to 14 teams today. Hopefully, having like I think around 4 new teams at the end of this quarter, between 4 and 6 new teams. Yeah, finalizing
mm,
the minimum threshold. So it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Of course, like it's not perfect. I mean, like as Robert mentioned, like GOT on a daily basis, they save a life. I have my meetings with them, all the presentation with them. This actual meeting event talk is, I guess, translated by GOT right now. So thank you very much, guys. Yeah, we will never get out of the GOT's help. Actually, it's something which is like very needed, especially
mm,
since like we don't want to replace things, but just like, create an environment where we have
mm,
Japanese users, Japanese language users, we have English
mm,
language users. So trying to mix these kind of things, we need kind of like a bridge. And
mm,
yes, GOT is definitely like required in this kind of environment.
mm. I mean, you mentioned like, okay, KYC team. I mean, you were part of KYC team, and although I mean, KYC is kind of involved in the whole Mercari, right? It means know your customer, right? So
Yeah.
I guess it makes sense that okay, if it's available for all of Mercari, that it should be kind of in English. So that's also where we kind of come from. Like some teams, they are a little bit more like focused on like their own specific domain that is not maybe so involved with other teams. But if a team is working with other teams, and especially like, okay, KYC, the client teams, um, I don't know, like even the previous session, payment platform like Fogost and Godric talked about it a little bit. So those that interact with other teams.
Mm.
So of course, like there is like the internal communication, but also like if you have to write documentation, if you have to write design docs, so if you share it to other teams and want to have it reviewed, then I mean, yeah, having it in English makes
Yeah.
the most sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe I mean, like you talked also about Mercoin a little bit, and I mean, Mercoin is a completely new company, and maybe we can also talk a little bit about the future. What other next steps we may have?
I love the switch. Really, that's really smooth. So yeah, I think yeah, the next slide, basically like there is kind of like the next step we want to move forward when it comes to like the
Mm,
rollout of this big inclusive teams initiative project.
mm,
Um, the first thing is that like we almost exclusively focused on the engineering side of the things
mm,
because, well, first I wanted to finish things, finish what I started, but also because we know it from the inside. It's much
mm,
easier for us being in the engineering division to try to explain how we should like try to move forward with the organization and the language usage inside of the engineering division. When it comes to product, which is like also very, very, very close to the engineers, of course, on a daily basis, it's much difficult because like we're not working inside of the product. We have like some echoes, we know from
mm,
a distance how it works, but we need people from the inside that knows what are like the current challenge for them to move to something which is kind of
mm,
like more inclusive in the language.
mm,
And that's basically what we need to do and what we started to do,
mm,
especially with two people. So Aya from Mercoin, that's
mm,
actually came, I mean, actually recently started to attend our DNI task force meeting to try to see how she could actually roll this out inside of Mercoin, but also like Shiten-san from Gross Platform team that
mm,
is also trying to push from inside. I know that
mm,
you, Robert, like you also have like other people you're
mm.
speaking with that are trying to yeah roll out this project from
So
the
yeah, like in our company, I mean, in general, like yeah, there's a lot of this kind of bottom up. Like I mean, it's mentioned here, like bottom up approach.
yeah
So basically, go bold, yeah, means kind of bottom up in a way because I mean, if you want to make a change, we definitely welcome that. And I mean, okay, I started, team started. I mean, you mentioned okay on Mercoin, there are some people that joined proactively. So you can just do it, and of course, like as a next step, I guess here it says top-down participation. So it doesn't mean that we want to force top-down, right? It just means kind of, okay, we started this from bottom up, but at some point it's also good to get like upper management support. Like, of course they support it, but like more proactively, like, I don't know, using English, being aware of this. And we have had like, I remember very vividly, in the past, and we still do like English all hands. So and upper management like VP, CTO, CEO, like they use English at those times as well. So we want more of that even, and but we don't want to like only switch to English all hands, of course. So
yeah
this kind of mixture, like a
yeah
little bit of Japanese, a little bit of English, like kind of inclusiveness and diversity yeah, in all senses, but not just language inclusiveness in general. So we kind of welcome DNI and we support. It's part of our culture, and yeah, I mean, product side has also been involved, and we have a lot of different plans for the future. And many people are involved. And actually, like one of the other things that we are planning in the future is about, well, it's in the present, but also connected to our future. Our Center of Excellence in India. Yeah. So we announced, I think it was on May, I forgot the date. So we opened this, our first, well, we do have Mercari US, but they have like a separate product. So we do kind of, I mean, we talk to each other, but the product itself is kind of separate. So we have Mercari and Merpay and other things in Japan. But this Center of Excellence in India, we're opening it, of course, to expand, as I said before, to become a global tech company. So this is our first kind of bigger go bold endeavor in that sense. And it will be a new challenge. So if we have all the answers, it wouldn't be a challenge. So we're going to try and make it work in a Mercari-like way. So again, we have our own culture, and how this will work out, I'm kind of looking forward to it. And there are, of course, many challenges. So until now, a lot of the development, basically all of it for the Japanese market, happened inside Japan. So both me and Tim and other engineers, they came from abroad and they came to Japan to work on the product. They could experience the product. But if you are not in Japan, then it's a bit hard to experience the product itself. It's a bit hard to experience the culture You cannot just go out and see how it is. You cannot just hear Japanese all the time. So this will be a new challenge, and how we can solve it, how we can make it work, is going to be very interesting. And we are considering all of this already. So definitely, it's going to be interesting to say the least. But yeah, let's see how this works out. And yeah, towards a global tech company, there is a lot of things we still have to do. But we are on the way, and we shared a little bit, but yeah, that's the end of the presentation, I guess. Now I would like to kind of open the floor. I mean, you could ask the questions even before, but if you have any questions, feel free again to post in our YouTube chat or on Twitter, and we will answer those questions to the best of our ability. But until then, let us have a little bit of a chat. So, Tim, what do you think?
Well, I'm looking at the chat right now.
You're looking at the chat. I
You know,
wonder
yeah,
how
like
many.
the situation, like it's pretty good, like compared to what it was before. I don't think like
Mm,
we can really like convey the feelings we had at the moment we joined the company, and explain like
mm,
how challenging it was for us essentially,
mm,
and like how easy it sounds right now
mm,
for the members we work with.
mm.
It's kind of like yeah, night and days. It's not finished, of course. Like there are like so many things we need to do, and of course like we specifically like focused on the DNI aspect of the language.
Mm,
But when it comes to like multiculturality, there are a lot of things we could probably like improve
definitely.
the company, of course.
So we
And
had even like I just remembered. Sorry to interrupt. There was like a project. It was about building the so communication and language are kind of tied together. So we made a project to kind of visualize each other's communication profile. So what this means is different cultures. Of course, they in different countries they have different languages, but they also have different styles of communicating in general. So maybe some cultures are a bit more direct. Some cultures are a bit more like, okay, you don't say it directly, you say it indirectly. Some cultures prefer like just interrupting immediately. Some cultures prefer taking step by step, like, okay, just turn by turn. I talk, you talk. So it really depends on how we can build this culture, like Mercari-like culture in this multicultural environment. Definitely a challenge.
we had one question actually that I saw, which was like
Mm,
how the Center of Excellence is helping Merpay actually.
mm,
So basically, like we don't want to create like, let's say, a task center or something like that. It's going to be definitely like a part of Merpay, which is going to be developed and owned
mm,
by this Center of Excellence.
mm,
So I know that many tech companies in tech right now create their tech centers in India, and they do it mostly because of the cost. So
mm.
I know that. For us, I don't think that's the main reason.
No.
First, like we have a lot of Indian citizens working inside of the group, and when I say a lot, I mean it. So it just made sense trying to create like, let's say, an external center outside of Japan, where in
Mm,
Japan it's kind of like difficult, as you can imagine, to recruit the higher the numbers of people we want to hire for the needs we have in terms of development. So
mm,
definitely, like we needed to create something outside of Japan,
mm. True,
and
true. I mean,
India is close, very close to us.
yeah, time zone, of course, like, I mean, I come from Europe, team come from Europe. I mean, we would prefer maybe if there was one in Europe, you never know. But anyway, like time zone difference is much easier to work with with India. And as Tim said, we have a lot of people who joined us from India. And actually, like one of the reasons, I guess, why India was also chosen is because we have people inside the company who pushed for this. So they wanted to build that. They wanted to be part of it. It's not because, okay, you do it kind of style. No, no, because they wanted to build that. So they got support, and now we are making this happen. And yeah, it's not just like, okay, we want to kind of offshore development. No, it's not like that. So we are currently working and planning, okay, how can we have the teams own certain features, certain domains in India? But again, this requires time. And I mean, it's part of the trip, but still, definitely look. Any other questions, I wonder?
Let me check.
I don't see any other questions.
No.
Okay. Yeah. Oh well. But yeah. Anyway, talking about India. So actually, I really like. So our office is in Roppongi Hills, and I really like this Indian restaurant in Roppongi Hills. Anyway, I haven't been to the Indian office yet, but I definitely want to go.
Yeah,
multicultural. Yeah, it's interesting. For me, I remember. I mean, now with Corona, it's a little bit hard to kind of also meet people. So some people they just joined during Corona, and for them, like getting to know others. How can you get to know another if you cannot see them face to face? If you just see the camera, right? So that's also another challenge that we are facing. I mean, everybody is facing it. So we have been trying various things to improve this, and hopefully it's going to be even better in the future. But yeah, it takes time and effort, and but still, yeah, Mercari supports it, and we are here to make that happen.
There is a last question. I think like we have 2 minutes to answer it, so let's be very quick.
Okay.
So the question is like, someone is very keen to work in Japan in 2 years, and the person wants to know what are the challenges we face working in foreign environments. So the thing is like, it depends from what is the foreign environment. Like UK was a foreign environment for me. You know, Japan is another one. It's different. Same for Robert. Like South Korea was a foreign environment. Japan is another one. Actually, I think like adapting to the culture is going to be something which is kind of like difficult, especially if you come from like a culture which is like very different. For instance, Robert and I, we come from Europe, and in Europe, we kind of like very direct, and in Japan, it can be seen as rude. So we have to adapt how to talk and speak with people. It's part of like some kind of the trainings that Roberts presented at the very beginning of the session. That's one of the things. Second thing is that like, and it's more for me, I guess, because Robert, like you can read English, read Japanese, and
Not yet.
Japanese. But if you don't speak the language in the country, and if you cannot read the language of the country, it's going to be incredibly difficult for you to live here. And you have to consider that there is isolation, right? You are like at the opposite side of the world. I mean, in my case, but also like it's difficult to bond with people because you don't speak the language, and difficult to basically understand what is happening around you. So that's something you need to consider.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there are many challenges, but if you are very interested in working in Japan, I would say
Sorry.
go for no. I mean, go for it. Like really,
Go for it. Worth
so
it.
yeah, basically, it will be an experience for you, and Japan is also trying to, as a country, to also have more English in general, and to support. I mean, there are a lot of foreigners in Tokyo, especially. So yeah, it is challenging, but if you wanna live here, or if you wanna just try, I definitely would recommend you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we are already out of time. So thank you very much for joining today's session, and hope you learned something from it. So that's it. Bye bye.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.